Ahead of the IRS hearing tomorrow, explosive new testimony out today. House Republicans say it proves the office of the IRS chief counsel had a role in the targeting. And Lois Lerner, the former director of exempt organizations, had a hand in those Tea Party delays. To the House Oversight Committee chairman and one of the lawmakers leading the investigation into the IRS, and friend of mine, California Republican Issa. Chairman, thank you for joining us. Tell us what to expect tomorrow.
Well, expect to hear what is essentially a progress report as we've gone through interviews of individuals in Cincinnati and now in Washington. We see something that we expected, but we had to prove, which is people in Cincinnati were the first contact point. They reported to Washington. Washington reported up the chain. And a 48-year veteran in Washington is going to point appropriately to the two places that we need to go next, to Lois Lerner, who obviously appears to have a hand in it, and to the Office of the Consul, which is a political appointment office where they assigned 3 lawyers to it, and much of the decision for almost 3 years was made.
Let's talk about that a little bit. I believe you're talking about Carter Hall, is that right?
We are a long-term veteran, just having retired, and an expert on 501c4s and other exempt organizations.
All right, what about Elizabeth Hoffaker? Tell us about her. We're going to hear testimony from her tomorrow, right?
Well, she makes the initial case, which is, of course, we have to get from Cincinnati, where this began, to Washington, and we have. We found out that the very, very first 501c4 application went to Washington. So from the very beginning, this was see it in Cincinnati, send it to Washington. We're going to see numbers like 1, 2, 10, 60, and then 100 cases, all of them being essentially controlled from Washington, D.C., and in this case, at least in part, from the Office of the Consul, a political appointment position, one of only 2 in the IRS.
Let's talk about it a little bit. So Elizabeth Hoffaker is some sort of IRS agent in Cincinnati who was part of the process of holding back conservative groups' approval process in the 501c4s, I believe. Above her was Carter Hall, right? Above Carter Hall, Lois Lerner, was she above Carter Hall? Is that how it worked?
Absolutely.
And what are we doing with Lois Lerner?
Well, we intend to have her back. As you know, the committee has voted that she did waive her Fifth Amendment rights as to the questions we wanted to ask her when she made extensive statements on the subject and then refused to answer additional questions. That'll be a next step. But ultimately, it's part of the stumbling in this case. Had Lois Lerner answered our questions truthfully, we could have undoubtedly gotten to the truth about this much sooner.
So it's very important, Congressman, Chairman. So you'll bring her to the stand, she'll likely raise her hand, and won't she take the fifth again?
Well, we have a number of ways to get this information. We're calling on the IRS to free up the communications related to this and to make other people available. But at the end of the day, yes, if government employees who continue to be government employees are paid not to talk to us, something's really wrong, as you know.
But sir, wouldn't that be contempt of Congress if she does it after you decided that she waived her Fifth Amendment rights when she made her statement? You bring her back, she's sworn in again, you ask her, doesn't she have to testify at that point?
Well, the expectation is she would. Her counsel is well aware that she certainly testified and then stopped testifying. Contempt is one of the tools we could use.
Okay. Elijah Cummings, your cohort, the Democrat on your committee, who's the ranking Democrat on the committee, sent you this letter. I'm quoting from the letter. Quote, rather than describing the whole truth, your letter appears yet to create a skewed account based on partial, incomplete, and cherry-picked information while disregarding key evidence that contradicts your political narrative. Congress Chairman, will you respond to Congressman Cummings?
Well, you know, his job is to stop me at every point. He represents the administration and has done their bidding for a number of years now. But we have his witness, Russell George, the IG, tomorrow, who's going to answer many of the questions he's been making claims on. And we have these witnesses. We want witnesses and their testimony to speak for themselves. Yes, both sides are free to put out excerpts from testimony and interpret it. We think we've interpreted fairly, and we believe tomorrow's hearings going to show that people who actually had these applications and who worked up and down the chain make it very clear this was not a Cincinnati decision. It wasn't just a Washington decision. but it was handled at least in part at very high levels, including the chief counsel's office.
Congressman, yesterday we reported that Democrats are trying to kind of point the finger at Russell George. Your reaction?
He's been at Treasury for about 14 years. He's been commended repeatedly for the good work he does. Many of us would like to see him do his work faster. We'd like to see sooner reports. But no one has ever questioned before the accuracy of the kind of work his office does. And I might note, standing next to him tomorrow at that hearing will be the former deputy staff director on the Democratic side of this committee who worked hand in hand on these reports. So any claim that this would be partisan, I think, would be out of line. This is a nonpartisan organization, and he is a career professional who has been recognized for more than a decade in this position.
Congressman, I have about a minute left. Treasury, you mentioned Treasury. IRS reports to Treasury. Are we ever going to see a Tim Geithner on the stand?
Well, we never make predictions of who we're going to see on the stand. We follow the evidence. We'll continue to follow the evidence. As it's becoming clear, the IRS scandal, this agency in crisis, whether it's their procurement, it's their spending, it's the control of documents, it's their choice of vendors. You know, they just chose a vendor who already has lost 123,000 Social Securities out of their secure database. That's the new people to control the IRS's dump of your personal data. These are all areas of concern. And as we follow it, we've got to follow it where it leads and fix it.
I don't have a lot of time. What about leadership on your side? Where are they? There's some inside D.C., inside the Beltway whispers that maybe leadership is asking you to back off a little. Are they?
Not at all. Leadership has been extremely supportive. We have a complex problem here. We have to get to the truth, and the IRS often stands behind what's called 6103, this idea that they're protecting these 501c4s by not disclosing information. Well, in fact, these are the victims. That's frustrating, but I'm working with Chairman Camp and the Ways and Means Committee to try to get to the truth and make as much of it available to the public as the law allows.
Chairman, I hate to cut you off. We're going to have to leave it there up against the end of the show. Representative Darrell Issa, thank you very much for your time today.